Hello, welcome to Old Nerd Watches Westerns, episode 6. This time I watched Rio Bravo. Excellent movie. Very long movie. 2.5, or not quite 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes long. This is an old DVD I found in a thrift store someplace, naturally. I think I got it for about $3. Earlier DVD. One of these paper snap cases. These are nice. Not the nicer clamshells that we would get a few years later, but they're still cool all the same. They look good. The only problem with them, they're easily damaged, just from normal wear and tear. So a lot of times you find them and they're not in very nice shape, but this one was in nice shape, so I grabbed it. I mean, there's a spot here on the UBC code that got torn off, but who cares about that, really? Again, older DVD, the special features aren't anything real exciting, just some like text screens, basically some profiles on a few of the actors. And that's about it, other than the trailer for special features on here. But this movie came out in 1958 and stars John Wayne, Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, what's her name? Angie Dickinson, Walter Brennan, who was the old codger in a lot of these old westerns. I guess he was a good friend of John Wayne's. Those two were good friends in real life because they did a bunch of movies together. And I guess that was one of the things that I read about this movie was that the relationship between Walter Brennan and John Wayne, their friendship. Off-screen friendship really influenced their performance on screen. This movie is a bit of everything, really. It's an epic western. It's got a little bit of a musical in it. Even there's a couple of songs in here. Dean Martin does a tune with Ricky Nelson, and then Ricky Nelson does a second tune with Dean Martin and Walter Brennan on harmonica. So, for all the musical haters out there, it's only like one scene and it doesn't last real long. And it's not bad to watch or listen to anyway. I was anytime an old musical would play, I'd instantly turn the channel if an old musical would come on TV. I never cared for them, but I've softened to those over the years. This one's pretty good. Just two numbers, like I said, and pretty well done. What else is interesting about this? Oh, on top of being a musical, it's got a lot of comedic moments, especially between John Wayne and Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan, of course, is the old codger. He's John Wayne's gimpy old partner. John Wayne's the sheriff in town, and Walter Brennan is his one of his deputies, along with Dean Martin. But Walter Brennan, he's an old deputy of the sheriff's, and they have a funny relationship. It's entertaining to hear the go back and forth between them. So the last old nerd video I did, episode 5, I watched High Noon, and High Noon apparently upset Howard Hawks, the director of this movie, the writer, director, producer of this movie. I think he wrote it. Directed and produced by Howard Hawks and Armada Productions. Who wrote it? Screenplay. Lee Brackett was one of the writers of the screenplay. It wasn't Howard Hawks who wrote it, but Lee Brackett is one of the screenwriters. She wrote the first draft of Empire Strikes Back and died shortly after that. But she was a really popular, mostly a popular science fiction novelist back in the 40s, 50s, I think. But that's interesting that she wrote this, and then was selected to write Empire Strikes Back because this has an epic feel, kind of like The Empire Strikes Back has. Big, long, epic fight of good against evil. I've always wanted to read some of Lee Brackett's old science fiction novels, and I think I own one or two of them. So one of these days, I'm going to get around to reading some of her stuff. Howard Hawks made this movie because he didn't like High Noon. He didn't like how High Noon painted, I think, basically how High Noon painted the people that lived in the town as all a bunch of cowards, and wouldn't help the wouldn't help the sheriff when the bad guys were coming to town. To none of his friends, none of the people that lived under his protection as the marshal sheriff of the town would come help him. And I think that's mainly what Howard Hawks took issue to. Now, to me, I also found that a bit far fetched. I understand how some townspeople would think that it would be suicide to become a deputy and follow the marshal, the town sheriff, up against this gang of bad guys that are hell bent on murdering him, and would have no problem murdering them as well for sticking up, helping him. So that part makes sense, but it was also very far fetched in that I don't think he would have been unable to get anybody in that town to help him. So, and that's why I feel that High Noon is more a fantasy. It was more, Gregory Peck, his character's hero journey. Like, he had to go through it alone, and that was more of a fantasy type story to me than it was anything else. Than it was to be, taken like a super serious Western. Of course, it could have happened. Something like that absolutely could have happened. But the story seemed more fantasy to me. So, I mean, I don't understand why people got so upset that. Well, I guess it has to do with the communist trials and everything that were going on back then, the Red Scare, and a lot of the people being involved in High Noon were wrapped up in that, and some of them were avowed like the actual communists. So I guess Howard Hawks must have been the all-American type, and didn't believe that story accurately represented America, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, this movie is in response to High Noon. And they're two very different movies. It's interesting to me that High Noon came out, I don't know, at least 5 years before this. High Noon came out in the early 50s. This came out in the second half of the 50s. And this is like a nice Warner Brothers Technicolor epic Western. High Noon, like I said, this is like 2 hours and 20 minutes. High Noon, I think, is maybe an hour and a half at the most. So this movie is very different than High Noon. High Noon, very gritty, very a downer, nihilistic, and it came out in the early 1950s. And then this movie came out, and this seems more like the golden age of Hollywood type film. Or it was even though it was serious subject matter, and there was a lot of similarities in the setup between this and High Noon. Outlaws are coming to get a prisoner that the sheriff is holding in his jail, and so it's him against this gang of bad guys. Only John Wayne has his deputies. He has people that will help him. Like the town helps him, in his fight against these bad guys, and it just. A different outlook, I guess, on people in general. Howard Hawks had versus the people that made High Noon, and I guess that's what the gist of it is. But anyway, if anyone down below knows the real story, please comment down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.